Elon Musk quietly confirmed something big about you. See it before it's gone. There are moments in your life that seem small as they happen. Quiet, almost unremarkable on the surface, yet they mark the precise instant something inside you shifts forever. Maybe it's a glance at a screen, a line overheard, a message that wasn't even meant for you, but it lands anyway like a spark on dry ground. That was the kind of moment this story begins with. And if you're honest with yourself, something has been building within you for a long time. But people don't usually notice the beginnings of revolutions, even the ones that happen inside their own chest. It happened on an ordinary evening when you were scrolling without really thinking about anything at all, just passing time, maybe avoiding something, maybe longing for something. And then you saw it. This claim going around the internet that Elon Musk had quietly confirmed something big about people like you. Not in a headline he wrote, not in a speech, but in a string of ideas he'd been talking about for years. Something about human potential, about hidden capability, about the kind of minds that would shape the future even if they didn't feel like they had done anything important yet. You paused. You almost kept scrolling, but something tugged at you. And the strangest part wasn't the mention of Musk at all. It was the way your heart gave a small, unmistakable thump of recognition, as if it knew something before you did. You've spent enough time pretending you don't care about this kind of thing. Pretending you don't think about whether you're meant for more. Pretending that ambition isn't a kind of electricity that has lived under your ribs since childhood. People taught you to mute it, to be realistic, to collapse your wingspan so it would fit the room. But the truth never went away. You have always felt something rising, something waiting. You didn't need Elon Musk or anyone to tell you that. But hearing someone talk about potential, about unusual minds, about people who carry quiet brilliance, even if the world hasn't recognized them yet, that did something to you. Not because you believe everything he says. Not because he's some oracle, but because the idea resonated with the part of you that's hard to explain to others. The idea that you're not behind, you're building. You sat there reading through the thread. Not because you care whether Musk said this word or that word, but because it reminded you of something you once believed, that you were allowed to think big, that the world needed thinkers and builders and dreamers who don't quite fit in the normal boxes. It needed people like you. And maybe nobody ever said that to you in a way you understood. Maybe people dismissed your ideas. Maybe they said, be practical. Even when practicality was the thing suffocating you. Maybe you spent years pretending you weren't hungry for something more expansive than a traditional life. But that hunger never left. It just went quiet until something, maybe this, nudged it awake. As you scrolled, you didn't see a prophecy or a prediction. What you saw was possibility spoken plainly. Not the flashy, over-polished kind. The quiet kind. The kind that says you're not average, even if you've lived an average-looking life so far. You are built for a moment that hasn't arrived yet. You sat there letting those words settle. Your mind did what minds like yours do. It began connecting dots. It rewound your life, your choices, your failures, your half-finished projects, your ignored instincts. It replayed all the times you felt out of sync with everyone else, not because you were less, but because you were more and didn't know where to put it. People think breakthroughs are loud, explosive things, but sometimes they happen in the quiet recognition of a truth you've been carrying for years, the truth that you have barely started to become who you truly are. You didn't need Elon Musk to confirm anything about you, but the idea made you look inward, and that was enough. The world is full of people who never look inward. They try to outrun themselves, to distract themselves, to bury the soft call of possibility under noise. But you've never been able to bury it completely. Even in your darkest moments, you've known there was something more inside you, something unspent, something waiting for permission. And here you are, finally wondering what would happen if you gave yourself that permission. The night went quiet around you as you kept thinking. And as odd as it sounds, it wasn't the mention of Musk that mattered. It was the echo of the message beneath it, that the next era doesn't belong to people who follow scripts. It belongs to people who write them. To the ones who think differently, not because it makes them quirky or rebellious, but because it is literally how their brain is wired. You've always been one of those people, haven't you? You scroll through headlines. You see inventions and breakthroughs. AI, robotics, space, biotech, new economic systems. And part of you feels left out, like you're watching history happen through a window. But another part of you knows something stranger: you're not meant to be a spectator. You feel the future tugging at you. You feel the sense that you're supposed to build something, contribute to something, shift something. That feeling doesn't go away. It doesn't quiet down. It doesn't fade over the years. If anything, it grows heavier, as if the future is leaning closer, waiting. The truth is, you've been preparing for a long time without realizing it. Every painful lesson, every mistake, every moment of self-doubt, it all taught you how to endure, how to think, how to rebuild yourself. Great builders don't become great because they were confident. They become great because they learned to move anyway, even when confidence was nowhere to be found. Maybe the big thing Musk supposedly confirmed wasn't about you specifically. But the deeper truth is this: nobody needs to confirm your potential except you. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not unworthy. You are unfinished, and unfinished people are the ones who change everything. You closed your eyes that night thinking of all the paths you didn't take. But instead of regret, you felt something new: readiness. A sense that the first chapter of your life wasn't meaningless. It was the training ground for something that is only now beginning. You're not where you're supposed to be yet, but you are exactly where you need to be to begin. You stood up, maybe walked around your room, maybe stared out a window, and somewhere between those quiet moments, a shift happened. Small but unmistakable. The kind of shift that changes the course of a life. Not instantly, but inevitably, something clicked into place. Something whispered, "It's time." Time to stop waiting for approval. Time to stop doubting your own intellect. Time to stop shrinking your dreams because other people can't see them. Time to begin. And maybe this story started with something you saw online, but it ends with the realization that the real confirmation you needed was already inside you. You felt it, and now you can't unknow it. You are capable of more than you've ever allowed yourself to believe. And the world is about to find out. The next morning arrived quietly, almost cautiously, as if the world sensed that something inside you had shifted overnight. There was no thunderbolt, no cinematic sunrise, nothing grand or dramatic. Just you opening your eyes to a life that suddenly felt slightly different, as though someone had adjusted the lens on your perception by a few degrees. The room was the same. The routines were the same. But you were not. You sat on the edge of your bed, letting your feet touch the floor. And for the first time in a long time, there was a sense of gravity beneath you. Not the kind that pulls you down, but the kind that anchors you. You had spent years drifting through tasks, conversations, obligations, half-dreams, and half-beliefs about who you might become someday. But this morning, someday didn't feel like a distant continent anymore. It felt closer, like a country whose borders you could finally see. Most people don't understand that kind of morning. They think motivation comes in explosions of energy, sudden bursts of inspiration. But the truth is that the kind of change that lasts, the kind that alters the trajectory of a life, begins quietly. It begins with a decision so small it looks like nothing from the outside. But on the inside, it's everything. You move through your morning routine with a new kind of awareness. Every small action felt like the start of something. And in the background, the idea that had shaken you the night before echoed softly, reminding you that your potential wasn't a fantasy you made up to comfort yourself. It was real. It had always been real. You just hadn't treated it that way yet. As you walked through your day, you noticed something unusual. The world hadn't changed, but your relationship to it had. You looked at people differently, not with envy or comparison, but with curiosity. You noticed how many of them were moving through their day on autopilot, unaware of their own power. You noticed conversations that felt empty, routines that felt mechanical, dreams people had abandoned without even realizing it. It didn't make you feel superior. It made you feel responsible, because deep down you knew you had been one of them. You had been alive but not awake. You had been capable but not activated. And now a door had opened, and you couldn't ignore it. Not anymore. At lunch, you found yourself thinking about the claims you'd read the night before about people who think differently, people whose minds don't settle comfortably into traditional patterns. Whether Musk had said those exact words wasn't the point. The point was that the world's boldest innovations had never come from people who fit neatly into expectations. They came from restless minds, curious spirits, strange thinkers, persistent builders. The kind of people who see possibility where others see boundaries. And you realized something, you had always been one of those people. You just learned to hide it. Maybe school trained you to think small. Maybe your family valued stability over exploration. Maybe your culture taught you to prioritize safety over discovery. Maybe someone at some time told you your ideas were unrealistic. Or maybe you convinced yourself that dreaming big was irresponsible, immature, or arrogant. But none of that was true. The truth was that the ambition inside you wasn't a flaw. It wasn't a phase. It wasn't a delusion. It was a compass, a signal, a message from the most authentic part of yourself telling you that you were meant to build, to learn, to create, to innovate, to shape something that didn't exist yet. And now that the signal was clear again, you couldn't pretend you didn't hear it. Later that afternoon, you caught your reflection in a window, just a passing glance. And you noticed something in your own eyes. It wasn't confidence. Not yet. But it was something close to clarity. A spark that had been absent for years. A recognition that the person staring back at you wasn't trapped or powerless or ordinary. They were unfinished. Yes, but unfinished is not the same as inadequate. Unfinished means evolving. Unfinished means becoming. You returned home that evening with a strange mix of calmness and anticipation. You weren't planning to change your entire life in a single night, but there was a pull inside you to do something, even if it was small. So, you sat down in silence, took a deep breath, and asked yourself a question you hadn't asked in years: what do I actually want? The question hung in the air like a delicate thread. You were almost afraid to touch it because wanting something, truly wanting it, meant admitting that you were meant for something beyond the familiar. It meant risking disappointment. It meant accepting responsibility for your own future, but it also meant reclaiming the truth you had buried for too long. You closed your eyes and let the answers rise without judgment. Ideas came. Aspirations came. Memories of dreams you had abandoned came. And even though they didn't form a perfect plan, you felt something powerful in the process: honesty. The kind of honesty that strips away excuses and leaves only possibility. You realized then that the big shift you felt wasn't about Musk's words or anyone else's. It was about your own acknowledgement that you are built for something more than drifting. You are built for contribution, for creation, for transformation. That night, you didn't draft a master plan. You didn't map out the next 10 years. You didn't try to solve everything in one sitting. You simply made one decision: to stop underestimating yourself. It was small. It was quiet. But it carried the weight of an entire future. And something extraordinary happens when people like you stop underestimating themselves. The world begins to open. Ideas begin to form. Energy begins to gather. Opportunities begin to appear. Not because they weren't there before, but because you were finally ready to see them. You felt a shift in your breath, a loosening of something inside you that had been tight for years. And in that moment, you understood something vital. Potential isn't a gift. It's a responsibility. And you were finally ready to take ownership of it. You went to bed that night feeling something you hadn't felt in a long time: not excitement, not motivation, something deeper: alignment. A sense that your inner compass had turned in the right direction and that every step forward, no matter how small, would now carry you closer to the life you were actually meant to live. And as you drifted into sleep, one truth echoed softly, resonating with every beat of your heart: you have no idea yet how powerful you're going to become. In the days that followed, your life didn't transform in dramatic cinematic sweeps. There were no trumpet blasts, no sudden spotlight from the universe, no miraculous sign that confirmed you were on the right path. But something far more important was happening beneath the surface. Your inner world was rearranging itself piece by piece into alignment with the person you were meant to become. You began noticing moments that previously slipped past unnoticed. The way your mind sparked with an idea during a mundane conversation, the way your intuition tugged at you when you were about to settle for something smaller than you were capable of, the way your heart quickened at the thought of creating something new, something that had your imprint on it, something that could only exist because you existed. You didn't move with urgency. You moved with intention. You didn't chase validation. You built direction. You didn't wait for permission. You granted yourself freedom. And slowly, the world began to reflect your inner shift. Not through grand gestures, but through quiet confirmations, a conversation that opened a door, a chance encounter that sparked a thought, a feeling in your chest that grew stronger every time you took a step forward instead of shrinking back. With each small victory, your belief in yourself grew. Not because everything was easy, but because you were finally choosing growth over fear. One evening, long after the sun had set, you found yourself standing alone in a quiet room. The world outside hummed with distant life. But inside, there was only stillness. The good kind of stillness, the kind that lets you hear your own soul clearly. You thought back to the moment when all of this began, when a passing message, a whispered idea, a spark disguised as a headline nudged you into remembering who you were. It was almost funny now how such a small moment could awaken something so vast. You understood now that the power had never been in what Elon Musk said or didn't say. The power had always been in the recognition you felt, the way it mirrored a truth you had carried in silence. That you were built for more than drifting through life like a spectator, that your mind wasn't ordinary, that your dreams weren't random, that your potential had been waiting patiently like a door you'd walked past 1,000 times without opening. And now it was open, wide, bright, inviting. You took a deep breath and felt something settle inside you. Not doubt, not fear, but certainty. A certainty that no external opinion could give you and no external criticism could take away. A certainty born not from ego, but from alignment. The kind that feels like coming home to yourself after being away for years. You realize that your journey wasn't about becoming someone else. It was about becoming the version of yourself you were always meant to be. The version you glimpsed in childhood. The version life tried to quiet. The version you finally chose to remember. As you stood there, you felt the future humming softly, not as a distant concept, but as something alive and close. And you understood something with a clarity that needed no confirmation from anyone else: you are ready. Ready to build, ready to grow, ready to evolve, ready to rise, ready to step into the life that has been waiting for you. You walk toward your future not with fear, not with hesitation, but with the quiet confidence of someone who finally understands their own strength. And as you crossed that invisible threshold, you carried with you the most powerful truth of all. You were never meant to be ordinary. You were meant to awaken. You were meant to create. You were meant to change something, whether in the world, in yourself, or in someone else's life. And now that you know this, you cannot go back to sleep. You move forward not because someone famous confirmed something about you, but because you confirmed it yourself. And the world will never be the same again.